So I have a tip for everyone that's live streaming. If you are live streaming, just because you start the countdown doesn't mean that you're live. And I learned this the hard way a little while ago. So for folks that have been waiting for us to start, I apologize. I'm sorry. Hi everyone, welcome to Stripe Dev Chats. We're here for real this time. My name is Cecil Phillip, and I'm going to be one of your hosts today. I'm joined by my co-host and teammate Paul. Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. We had a wonderful 15-minute conversation before we realized that we weren't streaming yet. So apologies to everyone who missed out on that, but we had fun.
Yeah, we had a good time. We didn't get into the DJ Stripe yet, but we're gonna get to that today. We're definitely gonna make sure that Jerome has his time to talk about stuff. But really quickly, why don't we just kind of jump into it? Jerome, why don't you introduce yourself really quick and tell folks who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Jerome. I've been maintaining DJ Stripe for now a solid 4 or 5 years at least, and I've been working in Stripe APIs since 2014. So it's 8 years now. I've used Stripe in a bunch of startups that I participate in, and I've been doing Django since the 0.96, 97, something like that release, of which was right before 1.0, so that's 2008. Yep.
Nice. And definitely, I really want to make sure that we kind of dive into your history of how you got started with Django and DJ Stripe. But before we do that, I'm going to share my screen, and why don't we talk about some updates that have happened around the world of Stripe. So for folks that don't know, over on dev.to/Stripe, we have a Stripe organization on dev.to. So you can go there and can see a lot of the blog posts that our advocates write, that our engineers and tons of folks within the company assist with that as well. So our teammate Matt wrote this really cool blog post about link to Stripe using the payment request button. That kind of just makes it so much easier for you to check out really quickly, for your customers, and also makes it easier for you. So if you're interested in learning about if you're interested in learning about link with Stripe and also the payment request button, make sure you head over to dev.to/Stripe, and you can see this blog post along with a bunch of others that are in there as well. Last week, I believe, we started releasing some videos from our React Native series. So this is the first of many videos that we're going to be putting out. This one's called Accepting Payments in Your App Without Any UI Design. And it really kind of goes through super quick how to use the payment sheet, which is kind of like Stripe Checkout, but for native applications, right? And so if you're interested in learning how to, just quickly accept payments, different types of currencies, being able to use wallets like Apple Pay, Google Pay, and those types of things, this would be a good video for you to check out so you can get started doing that. Also turns out that Paul and Jerome and also Vincent were here before, and they did a previous Stripe Dev Live conversation. So, gentlemen, I don't know if you want to talk about that really quick and talk about what you spoke about.
Sure. So this was about a year ago. We are on our Stripe Dev Live, which is a audio-only broadcast that we do. So Vincent, who is a Stripe engineer, Jerome and myself sat down to talk about webhooks, and we covered what they are, why they're useful, and some of the best practices. And it was really great to have Jerome there, because I would say that Jerome is probably the person who is the most knowledgeable about Stripe webhooks who doesn't actually work at Stripe. So it's a good guest to have.
That's awesome. All right, and kind of moving on really quick. So this is conference season, right? And a bunch of folks are heading over to this conference called All Things Open. I'm trying to get to the top of the page. Would you let me go to the top of the page? It would not let me go to the top of the page. But All Things Open is happening in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's going to be October 30th through November 2nd. And our teammate Mike is going to be there speaking, and along with tons of other folks. You see Brian Douglas and Scott Hanselman and like tons of folks that you may know, and maybe some folks that you're going to meet for the first time. So if you're in the area, make sure you go ahead and check that out. Also happening next week is a Caribbean Developers Conference. That's going to be in the Dominican Republic from November 3rd through 5th. Tons of Stripes are going to be there. We're going to be doing workshops and sessions, and just in general, like being around to like hang out with folks and answer their questions about how to get started using things like Stripe Atlas or Connect, or even just using Stripe Checkout. Another conference that's happening, Modern Front Ends. This one's happening in London, I believe. Oh, there's the date. Right here. And it's very hard for me to see. It's on November 17th through 18th. And also looks like there's going to be some workshops on the 15th through the 16th. So if folks are in London and you want to go over there, we're going to have tons of stripes are going to be there as well. I think Paul, you said Josh Ackerman's going to be there talking about some stuff, and then who else? You said Ben was going to be talking about.
Ben Bayard is going to be there as well, and he's going to give a talk about how we did our Flow to TypeScript conversion a number of months back. And I should also, for full disclosure, say that we're actually sponsoring this conference. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see we are silver sponsors of this.
Yeah, so this should be really fun. If folks again are in the UK and if you're over in London, definitely make sure you go and check out Modern Front Ends Live. And not only us, but Jerome also goes to conferences too. He was recently at DjangoCon Porto, and he talked about like how to facilitate sponsorships for open source projects. So Jerome, why don't you tell us like how was this conference for you? How did your session go? Like how was it in general?
Yeah, no, the conference was amazing. Like you were saying, this was in Porto. I had never been to Porto before. It's a really gorgeous city.
Mm-hmm.
This was at the Superboc Arena next to the Crystal something Gardens, and gorgeous city. Even the vice mayor came to introduce the conference. That was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my first Django Con, so this is all things Django and some related things. My talk was not specifically about Django.
Sure.
And it was really fun. It was really fun. I'm completely converted. Next year it's in Ireland. I'll definitely be going. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, I would love to go. I've never been to Ireland, so definitely something we can definitely put on the calendar to check out.
Wait, you work for Stripe and you've never been to Ireland?
I've never been to Ireland. Could you believe that? I need to talk to somebody.
It's part of the spin-up project, isn't it? It's like when you get hired here, it comes with 2 tickets to Ireland.
I mean, I need to talk to somebody because obviously I haven't been treated the right way. So we need to figure this out really quick because I really want to go to Ireland. But yeah, so if folks are around for the next DjangoCon, I think that you said that's going to be 2023.
Yep. Yeah, I think in the summer. I need to check the dates. It was announced at the end of this conference.
Gotcha. Cool. So if folks are into Python and Django, definitely make sure you check it out. And well, hopefully you're into Django because today what we're going to be talking about is DJ Stripe. And so DJ Stripe is Jerome's library that he maintains and just makes it easier for folks to integrate Stripe into their Django applications. But before specifically we dive into that, like Jerome, I'd love to hear like a little bit of your background. Like, how did you even get started, like using Django as like your web framework? Is it, was it a work thing? Did you just decide to learn it by yourself? Like, how did you kind of get into the space?
My first Django interaction. So that I had made this. I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft at the time, and I was really into the tech aspect of it.
Sure.
And I was working on World of Warcraft databases, and I had made this CGI bin type database, which I quickly realized, okay, that's not going to that's not going to work.
Right.
And I came across Django. I started playing with it. I completely fell in love with it. And since then, I think I must have used it in like 30, 50 different projects, something like this. I do consulting, so a lot of my clients, they end up using Django or solutions like Django, and so I'm very much in that world still.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you still play World of Warcraft?
God no. No, that's in the past. That's in the past. I have time now for things in my life. It's great.
Like my only experience with World of Warcraft was, so I had a roommate through college, through my undergrad, and I swear to you, he would, after class he'd come home and he'd be playing World of Warcraft until like Lord knows how long. Like I'd go to bed and he'd still be playing, and I'd wake up and he'd still be playing. And I'm like, dude, we got to go to class. Like, what are you doing? But yeah, that's as much as I know about World of Warcraft. I know folks get like really addicted to it, and I think the community, like if you're in the community, like you love it, right? So I get it. So okay, so that's how you got into like starting with Django and doing Python stuff. What about DJ Stripe now? Like, how did you make that transition to being like, oh, okay, this is a project that I'm interested in. This is something that I want to work on. Like, how did you get to that point?
So DJ Stripe, I I worked on and off with very like one-off integrations of Stripe checkout, things like this. And I wanted to integrate Stripe into this website, which, by the way, Hearthstone database. So I stayed in the Blizzard world. And I wanted to integrate Stripe there. I came across DJ Stripe, and at the time it was kind of uh, very DIY and lots of like weird design decisions and everything. So it was a little bit of a mess, and I wanted to start like take it, contribute back a bunch of fixes to it, and
Yeah.
it ended up that I contributed so many fixes to it that I became like the de facto maintainer, and then we kind of made it official after a little while. Um, and yeah, now DJ Stripe looks nothing like it used to, and we're still doing a lot of structural changes to the code to sort of and we also have to keep up with Stripe itself, which looks nothing like what Stripe looked like 5-6 years ago when I took it over.
We can only
And
apologize.
yeah, we have a hard time keeping up. We finally in the latest release we finally got some solid. In the last two releases, actually, we finally got some solid Stripe Connect um, compatibility. That was quite a bit of work, and that's my one of the co-maintainers, primary contributors, Arnav, who worked on that because he works with Stripe Connect, and I very rarely work with Connect.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we should take a little step backward here, and maybe if you can give us like a super quick overview of exactly what Django is, just in case there's someone watching who has no
Yeah.
idea what we're talking about.
So Django, like Rails, like Laravel, it's a framework. It's in Python. It's for you to build web apps, and it comes with an ORM, so you can design your own database models. It comes with URL routing, so you can quickly build pages. It comes with a bunch of functionality like views and forms and things like this. And it's the most popular web framework in Python. And so it has a huge community behind it. That's Django.
That's Django. And what does DJ Stripe bring to the table here?
So DJ Stripe, we want to basically give you the idea is we want to give you an ORM to your data on Stripe. So we're going to take in your Stripe data either by synchronizing it in some way or by ideally by connecting to your using webhooks. And we're going to keep a copy of your Stripe data in Django using Django models, which it's not a one-to-one copy. We have some slight differences, either to make things easier or because like we don't necessarily have the hundreds and hundreds of models that Stripe has. We don't have all of that done yet. Still working on 100%. But the idea is that if you want to build, for example, your own billing page, you'll be able to do that using items that are already in your database. You don't have to worry about how they're getting synced. So you don't have to worry about making runtime API calls. So I like to describe it as a cache to your Stripe data.
Got it. One of the things that I always wonder when folks create like those data copies of Stripe data, like how do you make sure that data stays in sync? Yeah, like
So,
is it mainly
yeah.
because of webhooks, or do you have like some mechanism? Because I mean, can you imagine if something happens outside of your app and changes the state of your Stripe app? Like, how does that information flow back into your Django application?
So 100%, that's going to be webhooks, and it's also going to be um, a design issue on the implementer side, where you have to think about, does this data need to be critically up to date, or can it just be eventually consistent, right? So if you're looking at, for example, I don't know, like your invoice history,
Mhm.
it's okay if you don't have the invoice from like 1 minute ago because I don't know, some network issues or something.
Sure.
But if you're on a page where I don't know, you want like the latest price for a product because you're about to add it to the cart or something, um, you might very much be encouraged on that particular page to refetch the data no matter what. So there's design decisions to be made when you're implementing this. DJ Stripe is very much best effort, and when I say cache, it's very much a cache. So that means
Hmm.
you can delete it, it'll be gone. You can resync
Yeah.
all of it, and that's good.
Okay.
And you need to be ready to do things like that.
Nice. And then what kind of data storage mechanisms does it support? Because I know Django itself comes with its own ORM, right? So do you just use
Yep.
what Django uses, or
Yep.
can I use CouchDB and Cosmos DB, and can I use like any database I want, or is it only specific to what Django uses?
You can use the database adapters that Django comes with,
Mhm.
because we don't talk directly to the databases, with a couple of exceptions, where we might have like some migrations, or if you're using Postgres, we might be using some Postgres extensions. All of this, where possible, is limited to Django. Officially, we only support the primary Django databases, so Postgres, MySQL,
Okay.
SQLite for development, and but concretely, we've had other users report to us that like they're using this on such and such database. I myself experimented using it with the Redshift adapter, so
Okay.
this sort of thing works.
Nice.
I'd just like to add that doing this kind of caching of your Stripe data on your end is something that we at Stripe actually heartily recommend for anyone who's looking to scale up their Stripe integration. Because no matter, especially when you get larger and larger, querying your own database is always going to be faster than making a request to Stripe. So often the phrase that we say is like, don't use Stripe as a database. Don't keep all of your data there. Keep your data in your own side where it is safe, where it can be easily gotten at, and it's fast as well. Because even though Stripe is unlikely to go down, you don't want to have all your data trapped within Stripe should something happen to the Stripe API. So something like DJ Stripe is something that we love to see for anyone who is looking at scaling up their integration.
The way we think about it is Stripe is the source of truth, and DJ Stripe is where you're making all your queries. But for example, even something like so we have a link between a customer object and like a Stripe customer object and a Django user object. And that link happens in Stripe metadata because we want it recorded in Stripe metadata. And then we, from that metadata, we replicate like foreign keys and things like this.
Nice. And that's a question I get a lot from folks, right? Is usually, hey, I have a user in my database or Auth0 or wherever your users are stored, and then I have a customer, quote unquote, my user, that exists inside of Stripe as well, right? And so how do I tie those two objects together? And I guess kind of like what Paul is saying, one, it makes it easier if you have that local data cache to query your information, but I'm sure it also makes it easier when I want to connect those two worlds together. And I want to say, hey, I have a customer. Paul's my customer. Like, what did he buy? And like, can I, quickly write a query without like going to outer space and coming back to kind of just understand like what does his payment history or his customer records kind of look like? So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we have the data syncing. So that's pretty cool. Like, what other features would you say you'd want to highlight other than the data syncing? I'm going to scroll down here a little bit and see.
Yeah, so webhooks as of the last version, we're actually setting those up pretty much automatically for you.
Okay.
So you set up your Stripe API key, and you can go in the Django administration, because Django comes with its own admin panel, which manages like database objects,
Mm.
and you can go in the admin and create a webhook from there, and it will automatically create it on the Stripe dashboard. So it's as if you went through the Stripe dashboard, and then uh, you had to like painstakingly get a webhook secret, make sure things are one to one, and so on and so on, and set up your URL and so on. We do that automatically. And the big change in the latest release is that it used to be DJ Stripe only had one webhook, which was like a global webhook. So you would have it at like slash stripe slash
Webhook.
webhook, for example.
Yeah.
Um, and now that webhook URL is automatically generated and includes like a UUID,
Mhm.
so that it's not guessable by just anybody, which isn't a huge problem because we do secret verification, but there's still concerns of like you don't want people hitting it with noise or
Sure.
making your database do too much work, things like this.
Nice.
Yeah.
So like looking at this demo, I'm guessing what happens is that like so I import DJ Stripe and now I just add like this annotation, right? And then I also love the fact that like the webhooks aren't hard coded. So it's not like webhooks dot customer dot subscription dot whatever. You know what I mean? So now I'm guessing just because it's a string, it probably makes it a little bit easier for me to like change what events I'm listening to. Do you have the ability to listen to like maybe multiple events also? I'm guessing like on a particular webhook.
By default, we listen to everything actually, because by
Everything. Wow.
default, yeah,
By default.
and we're still working through the design for this. Part of the idea of listening to everything is we strive to have every model,
Mhm.
and so keep everything up to date.
Sure.
Realistically, we're getting to the point now where we're thinking about, okay, how do we let you just integrate certain models, like not listen to everything, but it often ends up that, okay, if you're dealing with customer and payments and recurring subscriptions, then you'll want like prices, products, you'll want invoices, you'll want receipts, you'll want all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so you do end up listening to a lot of things anyway. Um, but we're working on some alternative designs to only listen to certain things. This was part of the work that was done in the last release, because now we can create multiple different webhooks actually.
Gotcha.
But presumably you can specify which webhooks you want to listen to, which ones you don't want to listen to, so you're not stuck with listening to all webhooks when you
Yeah,
first.
absolutely. So you can configure in the Django administration. You can absolutely configure, like you would in the Stripe dashboard, which events you want to be listening to.
Hmm. So for anyone listening, I'll just the reason why I was surprised to hear about all events is that there are a lot of events to listen to, and you have to be very careful because a lot of these events they have similar data contained with each other, but they're slightly different. Like they have slight discrepancies for certain use cases. So if you listen to all events, if you're not careful, you might end up DDoSing yourself by getting too much activity sent to your endpoint at any point in time. So be
Yeah.
very careful if you listen to everything at the same time, particularly if you're having like a sale or something and you get this burst of activity. It's very possible you accidentally DDoS yourself.
Wow, that's crazy. And I'm looking at this webhook handler example you have right now in your documentation. So I'm guessing like this events parameter that comes in is just going to be like that raw Stripe event payload that comes in.
Yeah,
And so now
it's
I
it's
can
an
just
event object. It's I think actually at this point, I'm not sure if it's a DJ Stripe event or a Stripe event, but they look very much
similar.
one-to-one alike.
Okay.
And so you have all the data inside of it, and you also have so connected to events, we have an actual like trigger event, which is our own custom event.
Mhm.
So when you're receiving a webhook, we record that in the database, even if it's not been validated yet or anything like that. So that's sort of a logging table where we store like where's the IP that hit this? Was the webhook valid? How long did it take to process? Was there a crash while processing it for some reason? And so you have all this you have all this information available directly from your handler, and those will trigger in your code whenever you receive that webhook.
I know for some of the webhooks, like I think for example the checkout webhook as an example, like when it comes in, it doesn't have all of the data. So for instance, like by default, like it doesn't have like the customer data, right? And I'll have to do something like make an expand request to be like, hey, give me this thing with like the customer information, so now I can have like one consolidated object. Are those options that I could specify in the handlers, or is that something I still have to do myself? Does that make sense?
No, that's something we do in DJ Stripe itself.
Okay.
And I think it's possible to get this data in the webhook, but it's a little trickier. So we just do it on our end at the moment, and we follow user requests if we need to sort of like implement more things. We're listening to our users basically.
That makes sense. So I was writing some webhooks the other day, not in DJ Stripe, and then for me, I always found it very useful when I had like a strongly typed object that I could dot into, and IntelliSense would pop up, and I could see things. And I kind of feel like in the Python community, there's like we're kind of on like a teeter-totter. You know what I mean? Like some people like it, some people don't like it, kind of thing. Like, what's your feelings on, you know, particularly when it comes to webhooks, right? And all of these events could have a different shape and different properties. Like, what's your take on like using things like type hints to kind of like improve the developer experience for particularly use cases like these?
No, I love type hints, and I'm a huge fan, not just for developer experience, but also just for strictness and quality of code. Unfortunately, like you said, in Python that was adopted very late, and more than that, it's being worked on very, very slowly. So every release now, type hints they're actually in a fairly good state. Like Python 3.11 was just released like a few days ago.
Yeah.
And type hints are in a very good state. On the other hand, DJ Stripe, we have to support Python versions going back to 3.7. We're soon bumping that up to 3.8. But we're still missing quite a lot of features, which make implementing those type hints easier and more maintainable. I'm also a TypeScript developer. I love TypeScript. I miss the incredible TypeScript tooling and experience whenever I'm in the Python world. And to that point, Django also comes with its own legacy there, because Django predates all of this.
Yeah.
There's a couple of frameworks such as Fast API that really go all in to type hints, and for example, you're able to create models which are 100% typed, and generates a REST API for you. It generates like open API sheets and all things, all kinds of things like this. I really miss this, especially since Django does a lot of magic. It has a very magic ORM, which is super nice if you don't have type hints, and you like it gives you sort of this incredible developer experience with like magic APIs and everything, but it's very, very hard to type correctly.
Yeah.
So like you said, Django, Python in general is slowly adopting type hints.
So I have a couple questions for you there. First off, a goedemiddag to you too, Rick, in the comments. Next, So you mentioned that you support, I thought it was a 3.4 going on. So have you completely dropped support for Python 2?
Yeah, we completely dropped support for Python 2 several releases ago.
Okay.
Right now, the lowest version of Python is 3.7. 3.7 is out of LTS in like 6 months or something. I like to retain support for any like live supported version of Python, but if we can drop it like a few months in advance, that feels okay still as well. So we might drop support for Python 3.7 soon.
So you do generally follow the whichever version is currently LTS is the smallest, or the smallest supported version.
Yeah, both for Django and for I see that for Cecil.
I try to come up before.
Both for Django and for Python, we try to follow the LTS. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So if it's supported, we try to support it.
And the other question I have just for on the type hinting, is there a specific IDE that you use for Python which is especially well suited for that, or do you use something like VS Code for both TypeScript and Python?
No, I use VS Code. I used to use PyCharm before VS Code, or just doing my own thing in
Notepad?
like the Linux equivalent. But
Also Vim.
yeah, actually. But no, now I use VS Code. It's very clean. They also have their own type hinting implementation, like type hinting checker and server and everything, which works, I would say, overall better than MyPy, which is the one that most people in the Python world will have heard of. Yeah, VS Code uses something called either Pylance or Pyrite, or I don't know what the relationship is between the two. But it's a custom Microsoft made thing.
Yeah,
and
Pylance is like the language server. So like whenever you install, I think it's called Python for VS Code is the official name of the extension. It installs Pylance, and it also installs like Jupyter and some other things.
yeah,
But then like I think a lot of that comes from Pylance, but I don't know what Pylance itself uses, because I'm sure there's like some other stuff inside of
so
it. Like
I would wager that Pyrite is the type hinting component of it, so like the type checker component of it.
Okay.
And does DJ Stripe do anything special when it comes to type hinting webhook events? This is the reason I ask is this is actually a problem that we found with Stripe Node, that an event has a data object inside it, and then what's inside that object depends entirely on what type of event it is. So it's very hard to type hint that. I was wondering if you guys had solved it, and if you haven't, is that something that you've kind of put some thought into, like how you would tackle that problem?
I know how I would tackle it in TypeScript. in Python, I don't know how strong the Python type hinting system is nowadays to support like basically you would do a union object between all the possible states that this can be in, and so you would have something, because I think the greater object that the webhook receives is always like always has like an object string which describes what the object type then in the data is, and so you would have a union of like, okay, this literal will have that literal will have that object, like if you receive a card literal, bad example, if you receive an invoice literal, you're going to have an invoice object. If you receive a customer literal, you're going to have a customer object. And then when hinting through that, you could, because you're also asking like, okay, what if you're hooking to specific like invoice dot customer dot, sorry, I don't remember the actual, like customer dot star in, for example. So those would just be customer objects that would have to be that would have to be implemented not as a string, most likely,
Yeah.
right? So you would have to provide like a customer kind of object that you can then hook into and say, okay, any webhook going through this is going to be looking like a customer object.
One of the things I always wondered about for folks that maintain open source projects and have to support multiple versions, like how do I can't even imagine how you do that. You know what I mean? Because the amount of testing that has to happen across like these different versions, and also having to make like these technical decisions around like what language features you support or don't support, or what you can do or can't do, just because I'm guessing you have to think about like the lowest common denominator when it comes to versioning, right? So like, do you have a particular strategy or any particular like workflow that you kind of go through for maintaining this project and still being able to like keep up with, you know?
Yeah, so we have testing, because not just that, we have to test on 3 different databases.
Yeah.
And so we have a test matrix. I think if you click into that little green check mark, you okay, maybe not this one, maybe an older one, because this one didn't
You want to go
push.
to actions maybe?
Like, yeah. So we test through many different like combinations of Django version and Python version.
Mhm.
And so we use Tox for that. Tox is very popular in the Python world
Yeah.
to run tests using a matrix of different library dependencies or even Python dependencies. And we use the Python GitHub. We use the GitHub Actions matrix for the Python versions themselves.
Okay.
So we'll run actions on Python on whichever supported versions of Python we have,
Sure.
and then there we'll run Tox, and Tox we have configured in tox.ini which versions of Django are supported for that particular version of Python.
Okay. So then I'm guessing these are the versions
Yeah.
you're currently supporting right now.
Yeah, so we dropped 3.7 in the master line,
Mhm.
and you can see just a little above on lines 4, 5. That's the matrix, right? So 3.8 and 3.9 versions of Python support Django 3.2, 4.0, 4.1,
Sure.
and all 3 database engines afterwards as well.
Well, that's a really interesting syntax to kind of list that matrix out.
That's shell expansion, actually. That's just shell expansion.
Oh, really?
If you wrote this in your shell and you hit tab, it would like give you just a bunch of strings that look like Py 3.8, Django 3.2, Postgres.
That's very cool. I'm going to try that out when we're not on stream and see how that works. That's cool. Okay.
Do you have any plans to add any additional database types, or are you sticking with these for now?
As far as testing goes, we're sticking with these. There's testing on more is possible if we have like users who really need this, especially if they're sponsoring users. But at the same time, these tests, like I optimized them just a few weeks ago, but they used to take like 50, 60 minutes to run times 4. So it's like four tests that each of them takes like an hour to run, and it's a lot of compute. I don't feel great about it. It's a lot of electricity usage, and it's also very wasteful if you're just like committing like, oh, hey, let me fix this typo here.
Yeah.
So I try to strike a balance between what we support, and also we want to be supporting the latest features wherever possible. So between what we support and between how much we actually test. And there are situations where we'll say, okay, we're not officially supporting this, but concretely we have users using like Django 4.1 in production and it's working, but it's not officially supported yet. And for example, in version 2.6, we've had a couple of point releases just for compatibility with Django 4.0 without actually saying we support Django 4.0.
And so you only test for those 3 specific databases. But what if I, for instance, wanted to use something like Mongo? Is that something that would just work with DJ Stripe, or is that just not compatible?
So you would be using a custom ORM library, and a lot of the burden of testing that will be on that ORM library. We can do some limited feature detection on things like does I don't know, like does it support like case insensitive search, things like this. Django's ORM system exposes such features, so you can introspect the ORM and by extension the database itself this way. Realistically, like DJ Stripe, the approach we try to take is we implement the models, right? And the more we just implement the models, the more likely it is that any ORM library might just work, because those are not particularly complex models.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So I'm looking at, I'm kind of just browsing at this GitHub repo really quickly. So you have over 1,000 stars. You have tons of forks. What do you need help with? Like if folks were to come here and say, hey, I want to contribute, I want to help you out, and I came over here to issues, what would be some of the things that are top of mind for you that you think would be maybe good first issues for folks, or maybe for folks that are a little bit more familiar with Django? Like what are some things that would be really helpful for them to help out with?
Well, you have a pinned issue right there with a big call for contributors.
Do we? I did not see that.
So this is JSON fields. JSON fields used to be supported through like essentially varchars, and over time, Postgres added support for like JSON fields, so we added support for those. And then Django added support for JSON fields in other database engines, so we added support for those. So there's like a complex migration path to do here, and this issue is an example of like, okay, does anyone want to tackle this? Like, we need help for this. This is going to be a blocker for an upcoming release.
Okay.
And that's a very good example. As far as good first issues go, that's a little more complex. We're still working on like getting some good direction for new developers.
Sure.
But what I do is, if anyone wants to contribute to DJ Stripe, I tell them like, hey, you can email me, you can talk to me, you can ping me in GitHub issues, you can file whatever you want. I'll talk to you directly and I'll onboard you. But like any project, we need help with documentation, and those can be really good starting points for new developers.
Okay. So I know you're the main contributor. Like, do you have any other ones that you consider, like, I don't know, supporting contributors, or do you have any folks that are regular that are also helping with you, or is this mainly like on your shoulders?
So I'm the primary maintainer. I'm not actually the primary contributor by lines of code nowadays. Arnav is, and he's actually he's paid through the Stripe
Sponsorship.
sponsorship that we get in DJ Stripe. So we paint through that. I'm the maintainer, so I try to drive the general direction, but also I still, whenever I have time, I contribute code. I contribute like the releases themselves,
Yeah.
and I have a co-maintainer who's there mostly at this point for administrative purposes, because to keep the bus factor very very high, I I always try to never have anything that can solely rely on me. So
Sure.
my co-maintainer can also publish releases, can also approve expenses in our open collective, can all sorts of administrative things like this.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. And I think if we
Alex,
scroll
by the
down,
way, my co-maintainer, Alex Kavanaugh.
there we
Sorry, I
go.
should say the name.
Yeah. So there we go. So yeah, I always forget that we can come down and we can select these stats and graphs and stuff like that and see folks. So yeah, like it looks like you have a lot of folks here that are not only like helping out to contribute sometimes, but like I see there's tons of issues, lots of healthy discussions here about adding things like support for Stripe issuing and like the database and the the search fields and like correct way of working with webhooks locally, right? So it looks like it's very active, and these are pretty fresh, right? 3 days ago, 10 hours ago, you know what I mean? So it's always good to see like when folks are really engaged in using this, right? And I'm definitely thankful that you're here, you and Alex and like the rest of the folks are here to continue to like make sure that the project is live and pushing forward and stuff like that. Let me see. We don't have any questions from our audience. Paul, do you have any questions anymore? Anything else you think we should cover when it comes to DJ Stripe?
Let me see. I think maybe just no, actually, I think we're good. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Paul, I have like a fun anecdote for you if you want to go over a little bit, because
Yeah,
we started late.
Absolutely.
let's do it.
I read your post on dev.to, dev.to, sorry, and
The object ID ones.
the object IDs exactly, and this is actually when DJ Stripe was first implemented. So there were Stripe IDs, but they were not the primary keys for the objects. And what that meant was that any foreign key in the database would be a foreign key to the integer ID of the foreign object, and that caused a lot of pains and everything. So we changed the system to support foreign keys to the Stripe ID string itself, and now we have to support both systems. So we have
Oh no.
by default we do this, but there's so like this is the blocker for DJ Stripe 3.0. It's going to be like designing and implementing the migration path for like just entirely just using Stripe strings. And once we do this, we unlock a lot of very interesting things. Like you talk about polymorphic foreign keys in there, and that's actually something where we really need it. And in our object model, there's some objects that we haven't implemented just because we can't support this sort of polymorphism.
Okay.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and that's like that's one of the things that I cover in the article is that you get these like almost freebies for doing something as simple as structuring your object IDs in a sensible way, and it just unlocks a tons of capabilities in other areas that you would never have thought that actually makes a difference. So that's kind of, I'm glad you got that out of the article. That's what I was trying to like convey to people. So it's nice to hear that some of the ideas made it across. But yeah, sounds like another thing to put up as need help with on your issues page is doing this migration, because it's hard to do.
In the issues somewhere.
The longer you wait, the harder it becomes as well.
Yeah, a lot of the work that goes in DJ Stripe ends up being migration work, because we want to be backwards compatible, and we want to support all the users who are currently on using DJ Stripe. And at the same time, there's also the question of the Stripe API versions themselves, so being compatible with multiple Stripe versions. That's very difficult to test. So this is all these are all the big pain points right now and the things we're spending a lot of time implementing.
Yeah. Looks like we got a question really quick from YouTube, and this one's coming in from Inspiration. This person's asking, can I do all actions in the DJ Stripe models? Example, I can subscribe to a user to a product, but I can also update the subscription, or should I use Stripe API directly sometimes?
So there's a couple of actions that we wrap in DJ Stripe for mostly for convenience. But overall, what you'll be doing is you'll have your for example your customer object, and that customer object has a Stripe instance on it. So the Stripe object itself is something that you can retrieve. Um, you can also directly get the Stripe object from the remote API, and from there you'll be calling those actions. It's not super consistent, and working on consistency is something that that's very much in progress at the moment.
Cool.
But concretely, you're safe just using the Stripe SDK and only interacting with DJ Stripe when you want objects that are locally cached, locally in your database.
Yeah, cool.
Because theoretically, anyway, if you interact with the Stripe API directly, DJ Stripe should sync with that when the webhook event comes in. Like, it should automatically kind of sync those things together anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a pattern to immediately sync the results to the database. Like we have a sync from Stripe object method that if you're going to call the remote API anyway, it's good to just sync back the results. But like you said, it's eventually consistent, and you only need to do this if you really need the data in your database to be immediately consistent.
Makes sense.
So hopefully that answers your question, Inspiration. If you didn't, let us know. Oh, he said, perfect, thank you. That was good to clarify the flow. So there you go. Fantastic. All right, folks. Well, we did go over a little bit, but we did start a little bit late too. But with that being said, I do think we should call it. I know we all have like work to do. So Jerome, definitely want to say thank you for coming on. I feel like we need to have you come back on another time to talk about like building Django extensions. I think that would be an interesting thing to talk about. And I have some questions about that too. So if you're interested, maybe we could talk a little bit about having you come back on. And I'm sure the folks that are watching will love to hear from you some more about like some of the stuff that you're doing.
Sounds good.
But with that being said, thank you all for watching. Again, we should be back next week with another Stripe Dev Chats, hopefully. And tomorrow we're having Stripe Dev Live, which is more of like our podcast type show. We're going to have a Twitter space talking about struggles of the developer advocate part 3. Yes, this is the third one. We've been doing a lot of these. So hopefully y'all join us on the Twitter space tomorrow. Hopefully y'all join us next week for another Stripe Dev Chats. All right. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.